My name is Ravi Mynampaty. I work at Harvard Business School, and today my talk is on a technique that I have developed for categorizing search queries. These are the searches that people are entering in your the search box on your websites or internet sites and so on, and how that can be used to improve the overall quality of your site navigation and UI and so on and so forth. And hopefully I will have some time for questions. And I have here some surprises for the first 3 questions. Yeah, people ask. It's a couple of shot glasses and 1 stuffed animal, but they have to be good questions. And maybe I'll let one of the volunteers decide if it's a good question, and maybe you can hand out to the person asking the question. So what is this talk about? It is basically it is a case study of how we are using these search analytics to we're grouping them and clustering them to gain important information. Now, why would you do this? Generally, search logs are pretty hard to, sometimes they're hard to decipher exactly what is going on. But I'm going to try to demystify that for you. So hence, I try to keep things very simple. And obviously, because this is only a 25-minute presentation, this is a high-level overview. We won't be able to go in-depth into every detail, but I'm happy to follow this conversation afterwards. So please do ask me afterwards if you want more specific information. And the most important thing, I think, is that I hope that 1 or 2 of you will be inspired by this talk and take this technique and adjust it, add your own insights, and actually improve it. And after you improve it, please share that with me, because I really would love to hear from you. And so you can start this off when you go to work next week. And so with that, let's jump in. I just want to say 1 word about, I read this book by Lou Rosenfeld. Some of you may know him. He wrote this book called Search Analytics for Your Site, and I read chapters 8 and 9 specifically, and some of the ideas here were inspired by him. And as I know that at least one of you in this audience has been to Arizona, and you may have seen the Grand Canyon, and I believe in the power of making incremental changes to your websites or your search engine functionality. So even a small drop of water can make, carve large sections of rock. So what is clustering? So it's basically a process that we've developed and we're using for categorizing search queries. And it is a very repeatable process, and it's pretty simple. You can use, as long as the data has been exported from your search analytics tool, which may be Google Analytics or some other tool that you have at your company, and you can actually derive good recommendations for improving site search and site navigation. And it goes with the philosophy of making incremental improvements. So what can clustering be used for? It is make sure that the top queries that users are entering in your site, those are accounted for. Make sure you're presenting them the best results possible. And it can also be used to improve the browse taxonomy on your site. And if you're making information architecture changes, you can validate that with numbers. I attended a presentation next door. The lady there, she's talked about having analytics and numbers to make the case to your boss that a particular change is needed. And this is actually a good application of that. And we can actually also improve search by doing things like autosuggest and synonym lists and so on. But this is just a taste of what is to come, and we will go into more detail into each one of these areas. Oh, I pressed the wrong button, the one you said not to hit, huh? So what is the process? How do you actually cluster search results? It is a cyclic process like this one. So you start from the top where it says create a query report. So this is an export from your Google Analytics or whatever analytics tool that you have and that you're using. And then you cluster the queries, and then you do an analysis of those clusters. And then you can draw some insights and then generate recommendations to actually make improvements. And we will see some of those examples. So step 1. So you have to decide how many queries you want to deal with. In our case, we have many different websites at Harvard Business School. So we decided that we would start with the highest trafficked website. And the reason being is that if we know that when we started this process, it was just an idea. So we wanted to see how long it would take for the longest, for the largest website. So once we have that information, we know that applying this process on any other website would take less than that. And we arbitrarily chose 1 year's worth of data, and then we cut off the tail. So any search query that has 10 or more, that was searched for 10 or more times, that's what we included in this analysis. So the website we chose is called Harvard Business School Working Knowledge, and it's a publicly available website, so you guys can look at it. Those of you who are interested in business, it has faculty articles and about business related things. So this is just a snapshot of some of the analytics in the fiscal year 12. So our fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th. So this is just a sampling. And by the way, these slides will be available on SlideShare, so you don't need to note everything down. You can be free to download this later on today. I will post it up there. So step 1 is to create the query report. So we divided the data by quarter. So these are in the center column is the actual term being searched for, or the phrase, and this is sorted by alpha. So you only see A's over here, and on the left-hand side, you see which quarter, which fiscal quarter it applies to. So quarter 1 would be July through September. And then on this column over here, it's the number of times that particular search query was searched for. Step 2 is to cluster the queries. So again, if you sort it by alpha, that gives you a really good start in terms of how to cluster the queries. And let's take a look more closely at this. So as I said in the beginning, this was a project which was sort of inspirational. We didn't have an end goal in mind. We knew there was something valuable out there, but we wanted to sort of make small mistakes and get to that end goal. So at the end of the process, we came up with these 3 categories of clustering, what we call as narrow, mid-level, and broad. And these are phrases that we came up with. And how each one is applied: narrow is just simple normalization, which means if there are uppercase and lowercase differences, or if there's a hyphen, or if there's a space, all those things can be collapsed into the same cluster. And mid-level clustering is more categorizing by subject. So in our case, because it's a business school, our subjects are more related to business, such as management and finance. So that is how we would cluster those. And broad level clustering is grouping by facet. And facet is used in a slightly different context here than in faceted navigation. So in our case, the facets are things like topic, a person name, or a geographic name, or a type of content it is. And we will see examples of each one of these. So what does each type of clustering enable you to do? So if you start with the left-hand side, if you do just the simple narrow clustering, it can, you can improve the most frequent queries users are entering and make sure that they get decent results. And you can do things like improving search suggestions. But mid-level to me is actually much more interesting because it can also help you improve your browse taxonomy and also improve metadata and the search index. And broad clustering is grouping by facets, which enables you to do these 2 things at the bottom. Again, we will see more examples of these as we go along. So let's look at an example of narrow clustering. There's no rocket science here. It is a simple example for the keywords that are being entered by the user, which are balanced scorecard or variations of the word balanced scorecard. So it's balanced scorecard or uppercase, lowercase, spaces, hyphens, and so on and so forth. And they can all be collapsed into this cluster called balanced scorecard. Let's look at a mid-level example now. So this is for the cluster brand. So this is the word brand up here, and that's the name of the cluster. And all these terms here, they can be collapsed into the word brand. And this is a mid-level clustering. And again, this is sorted by frequency descending. And this is just a graphical view of the same one. As you can see, it follows a classic distribution where some terms or some combination of terms are searched for more frequently, but then it becomes pretty shallow pretty fast. And this is a cluster for customer. I'm just putting this up for your information. We don't have to describe this one in too much detail. But let's look at how actually broad clustering works. So broad clustering is grouping search queries or search terms by what we call as facets. And for example, we have facets such as content type and date and demographic characteristics. And this is another way of doing it. And as I mentioned, this is a pretty simple process to actually apply because all you need is some spreadsheet program, Excel or something like that. And I want to say one word about what facets mean in our context, in the context of this presentation. So I happen to work in information management, and I work in a library setting. And I'm not a librarian, but I have the privilege of working with some very qualified people who are good at categorizing things. And one of my coworkers, whose specialty is metadata, she was able to look very quickly at our spreadsheet and say, these are the queries people are entering, and these are the type of things that they're searching for. And so she came up with, on the left-hand side, this column of the various kinds of facets. Again, what we call as facets. And typically, the most important ones for us are topic, industry, geographic area, and also content type. And the next column there shows what an example of for example, a geographic area could be not just a city or a country, but could be a region like Central Europe, or not necessarily political. It could, we could say things like Middle East, but we could also say things like New England, which is a group of states in the United States. So the second step was to do the clustering. So now, what do we do to actually analyze? So we have to start out somewhere and try to decide how many clusters we want to look at. And again, because in an experimental stage from us, these are the numbers how the numbers fell out. And your results might vary, but I don't think they will be that much off. But so maybe you can benefit from this experience and then apply this in your own work. So if you look at the top 50 clusters, you can do things like analyzing the top hits for the searches. But if you put in a little bit more effort and go all the way to about approximately 300 clusters, you can also do things like improving metadata and also improve search suggestions. And I will show you a couple of examples of these. And the biggest takeaway from this previous slide, why would you go from 50 to 300? So if you actually just analyze the top 20 clusters, it covers about 14% of your queries. But if you're willing to analyze the top 100 clusters, it covers about more than 1/3, 37% of your total queries. So by analyzing the search logs at a cluster level, you get a very good coverage of the search terms that users are entering. So I'm a big believer in actually applying things, making incremental improvements, and taking what analysis we have found and actually applying it in real life. So what do you do? So let's take some action. So looking at the top clusters, we are actually able to, I think Avi Rappaport, who is a search analytics expert in the United States, he says it's like having conversations with your customers. Your users are, basically they're talking to you through your search engine. Not all of us have the luxury of being able to do A/B tests and real or somewhat more involved user research. So this is something that can complement that. It's not a substitute. So when you look at these clusters, you can try to figure out, is your content, are you actually serving your user? Is the content that you have, is it what they're looking for? If not, how can you guide them to the right content? So we can actually try to improve the site navigation. So we can look at the clusters which have the highest frequencies, and then make sure that those are somehow applied in your site navigation. And I will show you an example of this. And we can make sure that these clusters appear in maybe the header or the footer or in somewhere else in your browse taxonomy on your website. So this was an example. Once we clustered the data for the working knowledge website, these were the top clusters. So they're all, many of them are business related. I don't know what happened with Apple during that fiscal year. Maybe there was some big event, and it was not that surprising what people are searching for. But what was surprising were these three clusters. We found that balanced scorecard, social media, and ethics. They appeared in the top 10 clusters. So this was something that was important to the user. But these were actually missing from our browse taxonomy on the website, these three clusters. So we categorized them, and we believe that they belonged in the second level of the topics on the website. So what I mean by this is a list of all the articles on this working knowledge website grouped by topic. And nowhere on this list of topics did balanced scorecard appear, or ethics appear, or social media appear. So this was giving important information that we wanted to allow users to get to the content that they're looking for through all possible paths. So one recommendation that came out of this clustering exercise was that we insert these topics into the browse taxonomy. For example, balanced scorecard would appear under leadership and management. Ethics would also appear there. And then social media would appear under, for now, something we categorize as other. But in the future, we might break this one down into more granular topics. So what does mid-level clustering do? This is, it can also inform if you want to have certain time periods when you want to promote some pieces of your content, say it's a timely article, or some big event has happened on Wall Street, and you've written an article about that. So you can see what people are searching for. Are people searching for that event that happened on Wall Street, and you want to write some content that covers that? So that's what the mid-level clustering can help you with. So in the beginning, I said that my specialty is search and findability. So what about actually improving search? So let's see how this clustering can do that. So one way it can do that is actually by giving you a list of synonyms. And I want to offer one word of caution here. I like synonyms, but I think they should be applied very conservatively because they have the possibility of increasing the number of results that come back. And that's not always good. It depends on your use case. And in my case, it did not apply. So I did not go too crazy with implementing synonyms, but they were more exact matches. So what do I mean by that? So for example, these were sort of variations: balanced scorecard, BSC, and so on. They could all be mapped to the phrase balanced scorecard. So these are more like one-to-one synonyms. Another way you can improve search is by improving the no results page. So this is when users enter a search term on your page and you don't have content that directly connects to the search term. So therefore, you present a nice no results page. You don't want to leave them in a dead end. So one possibility is to present the list of clusters on the no results page and say, hey, you searched for term XYZ and we don't have that content, but maybe this is what other people are searching for, so maybe this can be useful for you. So in the beginning, I said this is a simple process and it's repeatable. So what is the time commitment? So anywhere from a couple of hours to a couple of weeks, depends on how much you want to do, and how many queries you want to analyze. What is the size of your website? In our case, we looked at our largest website, and it took about 2 person weeks. So I had an intern working for me, and she helped out with a lot of these exercises. And again, it was mostly work in Excel. So actionable results. So when you look at the amount of time invested, if you spend a couple of hours, you can get some benefits already, like make sure your top clusters are accounted for, that you try to get good results for your customers for those top clusters. And you can also have some information about taxonomy, how to improve that. But if you're willing to spend about 1 week, you can do all these things at the bottom. And again, this is our experience. Maybe your experience will be slightly different, but I think it'll be about the same. So some things we have not done yet is to implement autosuggest. I'm sure you all used Google and Bing and so on, and the friendly search suggestions that pop up when you're typing. So for example, if users in our case were searching for the word innovation, there were 3 or 4 possible suggestions that we can populate autosuggest with. So this is sort of like a next step for us. And also new access structures. So what a beam access structure is allowing users a different path to your content that you already have. So much to our surprise, we found that people were searching for podcasts. They were entering the word podcasts on our search box. So maybe it's useful to have the word podcasts somewhere in the navigation. And there are also some people are searching by, looks like they want to search by field. They want to restrict searches by the title of the article or company name and so on and so forth. But this is an exercise in improving your content and as also providing some extra search functionality for those smaller percentage of users who want to use this type of fielded searching. So in summary, how did we do this project? Initially, we had some idea of a plan and a process, but then we were willing to make adjustments. So if you want to get from here to there, we started off and then we made a wrong turn, we came back, we made another wrong turn, came back, but eventually we came to an end goal which was yielding good, actionable recommendations. And if you want to do it, I would say don't make it too complicated, and not only be willing to experiment with your process, but also experiment with the data. The more you do this, better you'll understand your customers, the better you understand your website, and that'll help you a lot. So the other thing is also in order to demonstrate the value of this to your business owners, who also obviously need to be convinced that the changes that you suggest are valuable, is to build quick prototypes if you can, which they can actually click through and browse and see the effectiveness of it. And then you can also repeat this process on other sites. So in conclusion, I say the most important thing is take action, and a small drop of water can carve a rock, I think. So I hope 1 or 2 of you will take inspiration from this and try this out and tell me about it. And thanks very much. And you can find me in various places like this. Feel free to connect, and we have some time for a few questions, I think.
Are there any questions for Ravi? Okay. On the right side, on the left side.
Hi. I would like to ask you about the frequency of taking the clustering with your website. How often do you think you should take the data you have and look at it?
Right. So it's going to, the variables there depends on your business model and how much traffic you have on your website. So I would say if there's a major redesign coming up on a website, that's when you do it 1 time at least. And then after that, you try maybe every quarter, every 3 months, and see how that goes. I don't think you should do this every week. It depends on how many websites you have, then you can try that. Yeah.
Okay, and do you think this process can be semi-automated to make it easier, faster to refine your clustering?
Yes, certainly it can. I've heard other people also ask me this question actually. Can you write some programs, like maybe some macros to do this? In our case, again, as I said, we weren't exactly sure how we would get to the end goal, so we just wanted to keep it simple and repeatable. So I would say yes, it's not something that we have done, but if you are willing to do it, I think that's it'll be very useful. Yeah, I think some of it can be.
Okay, if I can just one more question. Do you think that with certain websites, your clusters can change rapidly? I mean, not cluster, but facets and taxonomies.
Yeah, no question. I'm sure if it's like a news website or yeah, the news website or like an e-commerce site, yeah, definitely they can change a lot. In our case, it's we publish on a daily basis on this website, but it's not that much content. So yes, you're right. So maybe that would be a good point. In that case, you have the choice. Do you do narrow clustering, mid-level, or broad? So maybe in that case, a broad level clustering would be most useful.
Yeah, because it's faster.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
So Ravi, I think he deserves an award. What do you think?
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah, we have 2 shot glasses and a
Tiger or shot? What do you want? Tiger.
tiger. Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Have you been maybe here?
Oh yes. Okay. Thank you. Sorry that I got.
Have you been maybe analyzing some kind of metrics regarding of user satisfaction of this search results? For example, I don't know, like bounce rate from this search result pages, and how did your optimization improve it or not?
Yes.
Do you know it?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely those are the most basic things you should do before you try to do something like this. Make sure that you look at, actually if you look at Luro's on Felsbook, I would highly recommend it. It's, you do things like the no results page and the no clicks page, and yes, the bounce rate essentially. So make sure that that's handled very well. But that is sort of at the query level, and then you can apply the clustering to that, and that's why it is sort of a stage 2. I would highly recommend you start with the basics and then move to this. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, but have you checked these results? After your actions, did it improve or not? Your, for example, the search results. Do you know it or not? And what was the scale?
Oh, the scale. So I'll have to take that offline. I have to go back and look at the numbers. Okay. But yes, there was improvement in the, for example, the navigation was the obvious improvement, and also the no results. Okay. But again, when you implement this, you have to get the sign off from the business owner. So we haven't implemented every single recommendation that I have shown here. So
okay. So maybe I'll find you.
Yeah, of course, please. Yeah. Oh yeah, here. Yeah. Well, only choice is 2 short glasses, so one of them is for you.
Big one or the little one? Sorry?
Okay.
Sorry, here.
Yeah.
I have a question. So, in the results page, because I understand that on the page you have the clustering and the user can click on it and see what's underneath. But after the user searches, I know you don't have the auto-populate. We do, but later on, when you display the search results, do you cluster them as well, or you don't? And is it an improvement, or versus not if you do cluster them after?
So right now we don't. When people search for the cluster, hopefully we have, so okay. Again, because this is a short presentation, I'm going to go into every detail, but search is not a technology, it's the process. So the content also needs to be enhanced to match the clusters, essentially. If you have content that's mapping to one cluster, you have to tag it in some format, so it's findable by that cluster. So if you do that, then I think your results would automatically be grouped, even if you don't explicitly group them on the search results page. But that's a good idea. You mean like how Google does it in a...
Well, no, we actually do it in the company, and I don't, like as a user, I sometimes don't see the added value, so I don't see the results that I'm really looking for versus Google, who gives me the actual results, and I can kind of click through them. So that's why I was wondering if you kind of went into that and did see the comparison and saw the pros and cons.
Yes, I'm sorry, maybe I didn't explain that clearly, but our search results page still looks the same. We do give a list of results like Google does, but on the browse page, that's where we add the navigation elements.
I get it.
So definitely you should keep, in fact, a lot of people are just natural searchers, so we should definitely support them.
All right, thanks you.